Welcome to the Million Dollar Baby webinar. We're glad you're here. In fact, we have a gift for you, a 4-day, 3-night vacation to a destination of your choice of over 100 different destinations. 32 destinations are here in the United States, and here are the top 5 choices people have selected. Or, if travel is in your itinerary, there are over 86 foreign destinations you can choose from all over the world. Both exotic and old world countries are available to choose from. Here is but a small sampling of the 86 foreign destinations you can choose from all over the world. Whether you want to vacation in Cape Town, South Africa, Paris, France, Rio de Janeiro, Australia, Thailand, or Rome, or another destination you might like, it's your choice. Or if you're not sure what destination you wish to explore, why not try several destinations on a cruise using one of these 4 cruise lines? Each has its own flair of excitement or just plain relaxing depending on the cruise you choose. This is our way of saying thank you for joining us on our webinar today. In order to receive your complimentary gift from us, we ask that you do 3 things. First, stay on the webinar on camera for the entire presentation. Secondly, your agent will contact you to fill out the survey after the webinar and give you the vacation voucher. At that point, you can determine what city or what location you want to go to of those 100 different destinations. And finally, we ask that you be responsible for all taxes, food, and transportation to and from your vacation spot. Now, sadly, Uncle Sam has to have his taxes on everything, so if you can handle the taxes, then we'll handle the vacation. Sound fair enough? All right, let's get started. This is America. There is one bad word that most Americans hate to deal with, and that is debt. Because of debt, it's almost impossible for people to achieve their personal goals in life, like purchasing a home, going to college, or even saving for retirement. Now, we all have an American dream as we start out in life. In fact, here is a couple I am sure you know that has an American dream of their own. Let's watch how it develops. As you saw, Carl and Ellie never quite reached the goals of their American dream. Things in life got in the way to prevent that from happening. Now, the problem with the American dream is that all those stages in life end with the accumulation of more and more debt. And according to Western and Southern Financial Group, as you can see, it takes about $375,000 on average to raise one child from birth to age 18. At the next stage, you will have college, which when they get out of high school, they go into college. And if you were to get a 4-year degree, most students would pay on average nationwide about $108,584. And that's only if they're in state. Now, that doesn't even consider the student loan interest and lost income until those student loans are paid off. Another national average we see is the wedding cost. As you can see, it does cost more in some states than others, but the national average is about $36,000 nationwide. And then on top of that, buying a home, the national average of owning a new home in 2025 is $385,000. And when it comes to owning a car, AAA has pointed out that the national average of total monthly expenses of owning a new car is about $1,024.71. And if you multiply that monthly payment by 12, you come up with $12,297 per year just to own and operate a new medium-sized sedan. That's not counting the gas you put into a vehicle. You could add another $10,557 to bring that annual cost of owning and operating a new vehicle per year to $22,854 per year. Now add the national average a person owns that vehicle of 8.4 years. You will see that by the time they've owned that vehicle that long, they will have invested $191,973.60 just for one new vehicle. And if you put all these national averages together, you will see that the total average cost to get started in life is just over $1.6 million that you start in debt. But we bring strategy. Now, we do not consolidate, nor do we refinance, and we don't negotiate. Instead, we simply eliminate them. How do we do that? Well, what if we could teach you how to eliminate all of your student loan debts, put money back in your pockets, decrease your interest rates, get you out of debt in 9 years or less, cut your taxes, set you up so that you can retire to a tax-favored income, and develop generational wealth all at the same time. How do we do that? By using a program that we call the $1 Million Baby IUL. What is an IUL, or an Index Universal Life Policy? Well, let's let one of our carriers tell you.
Like many things, life insurance has evolved a lot over the past decade. To understand just how far, start by considering this simple question. What do life insurance and smartphones have in common? Remember when phones only made calls? And taking pictures, listening to music, or watching TV each required a separate device? You needed different devices for different tasks, making things more complicated and costly. Today, nearly everyone leaves home with a camera, stereo, internet browser, and flashlight in their pocket, all in the form of apps on their phone. Life insurance has undergone a similar transformation. It traditionally offered little more than a death benefit. If you wanted coverage to help address the financial risk of a chronic or critical illness, or to lighten the burden of funeral planning, you had to purchase multiple insurance policies, making protecting your family and financial future more complicated and costly. Now imagine Index Universal Life has features like apps to a phone, customizable to meet your needs. Introducing Transamerica Financial Foundation IUL, a multi-purpose life insurance policy for your multifaceted life. Let's start with the core features you get right out of the box. Of course, FFIUL provides a federal income tax-free death benefit for your loved ones if the unthinkable occurs. It also offers the upside potential of index account options with the potential to grow tax-deferred policy value, downside protection that ensures index accounts are never credited with negative interest, and access to policy value through tax-free loans and withdrawals. But that's not all. You can choose from many features to fit your needs, like living benefit riders to help protect your quality of life in the event of an unexpected qualifying illness, concierge funeral planning services on qualifying policies, and more. With the FFIUL from Transamerica, design a life insurance policy with riders customized to meet your needs in today's financial landscape. You may not check your policy every day like your phone, but rest assured, Transamerica brings 150 years of life insurance experience and will be there to protect your family when you need it most. Ask your financial professional today about the versatility of Transamerica Financial Foundation IUL.
Now let's take a look at some of the benefits of this program. The key features of an Index Universal Life insurance policy is the first thing, it is a permanent policy. That means the premiums never go up unless you choose to add more to it as you see fit. It's also tied to the market index, which means it's got great growth potential. It's also got guaranteed interest rate. You cannot lose money because it's got a floor to this. It has to put in a certain amount of income interest into this at all times, and sometimes they grow quite large, but it never goes below a certain minimum. It also has tax-free withdrawals through policy loans. In other words, you can get money anytime out of your policy anytime that you need to as a policy loan. It also has flexible income. So in other words, if you get pressed financially into a hard spot, you can slow down on how much you put in, and when you get flush with cash, you can dump more cash into it, making your finances snowball in growth. It also is tax-deferred accumulation, just like an IRA. But best of all, it is designed to fit your personal needs and budget. For example, let's take a look at one. Here is one guy by the name of Eric. I want you to meet him. He's 30 years of age. He has a newlywed wife of 28 years of age. She's also pregnant, and he has a new job as an entry-level associate. Because of all these new changes in his life, he determined that he needed to save for a house, put money away for the new child's college, and have some retirement funds set aside. So if we were to do that by putting that money into a bank, the first problem we'd have would be the fees that are connected to the bank. It also has low accumulation that is built into this thing with a 0.01 on most cases, where that's what you get for a savings account. And then liquidity, since the money is always being tempted to be constantly taken out of a savings account, it has terrible liquidity. And also, if it took it in to put it into a CD, it has its problems too. Like for the time that there is no liquidity at all, like in this case, a 13 months, a person would have to wait before he can get his money out. It has low interest in it. So in other words, waiting that long for a low bit of interest is not a good idea. Taxes on the growth, so that you don't even get the full growth out of it because you're being paid the taxes. What about a retirement account? These are popular, like the 401k, 403b, Roth and standard IRAs. These have fees to start off with, sometimes as high as 3/4 of the first year's premiums. That's not good. And then it's got taxes on the growth at the withdrawal. And if you take it out before you're 59 and a half, there are penalties where you could lose up to 30% of your IRA on taxes and penalties. And because it's tied to the market, when the market drops, it will drop to even below zero. So consequently, you can lose money on an IRA. The only real solution is the $1 Million Baby IUL. It has no loss of principal, great earning potential, tax-deferred growth, liquidity, tax-free withdrawals via policy loans, low fees for withdrawals, and because it's a life insurance policy, there's death benefits that go along with it. And let's look at a few more of these other benefits that are offered, like income replacement, critical illness, income protection, family coverage, death benefits. Yes, this policy will cover a whole family and not just an individual. Now, what was Eric's budget? Eric didn't have much money, but he realized he could save about $200 per week to place into his program. Well, he knew he needed to buy a house, pay off his student loans, pay for child's college, have retirement income, and so we're going to look at how that takes place. When we take a look at Eric's numbers, we see that he starts off with $800 a month. The policy value starts right off at almost $2 million. But that $800, when you multiply that by 12 months, it comes up to $9,600 every single year. As you see, as you go on down the years on that column, you'll see that the price never, ever goes up. Now, the only way that that price will ever go up is if he decides he wants to add more money into that. But that's not the column we want to focus in on. What we want to focus in on are these last four columns: the premium outlay cumulative column, the policy value column, the cash surrender value column, and the death benefit. Now, this column, the premium outlay cumulative, is what he pays in there every year as his premium. So you can see $9,600 is what he pays in every year. So every year it's 9.6 plus 9.6 plus 9.6. And as you can see, it starts to accumulate very quickly as it goes on up there. That's why we call this column the investment column. Now, the policy value column is what we call the equity column. The reason why we call it that is because that's what the policy is worth at that year. Now, it's going to pay out more with the death benefit, as you can see, but that's what it is worth as the value is concerned. Now, you say, now, wait a minute, Ray, we're starting off with $7,195, and I know he put in $9,600. What happened to the other $2,400? Well, that's what he used to buy this bank. All the rest of the money that's in there is his money. The entire bank is his now. The money is in there, is all his, everything, and it's going to continue to grow because even the interest rate that he's got set there at 7.25. Now, that's the lowest we can quote. But as we take a look at this interest rate back over the last 20 years history, it's averaged out to over 10%, usually right around 11%. So you're actually getting more value on your money than what is being quoted here in this illustration. But anyway, the policy value, this is what it's worth every year. And as you can see, when you add that interest rate in there along with the premium that he's paying, that's why this number keeps growing and growing and growing until finally over here in year 11, he actually surpasses what he's invested. And at that point, it starts to snowball real quick. And that's why it continues to grow and grow and grow. And that's what is determining the value on the death benefit is the policy value. All right, so let's take a look at the third column, which is the cash surrender value column. This is where a lot of people, when they see that, they think, okay, this is what I get out of my policy if I ever gave it up and surrendered the policy. But that's also the number that you can borrow from it when you do a policy loan. So let's not look at it as a surrender value. Let's look at it as a policy loan value. Now notice the first 3 years, they've got zeros up there because they want you to get into the habit of not even thinking about pulling it out. You're just putting it in there every month. Same old $800 every month to put away toward his retirement. Okay, so that's why we're doing this. Now, as you can see, in year 4, you can take out $10,000, or year 5, 21, 32, 44. You can see that number keeps growing as well until you get over here to year 15. And at year 15, that's when it becomes what we call fully vested, where you can literally take out the full amount of what the policy value is. And it stays fully vested the rest of the policy life, or in this case, the rest of his life too. So that's why you see that cash surrender value being that way. And of course, the death benefit, it starts off with 1.192. Notice it's already grown another $7,195 on that death benefit. So every time you look at the death benefit, how it grows to whatever is reflected off of that policy value. And so you got $31,491 growth in year 4 on top of that $1.192 million right there. So you can see that the total is 1.223491. All right. So this is how this policy works. In year 6, Eric comes up to me and he says, Ray, I'm tired of paying on my student loans. I say, okay, great. How much do you owe on your student loans? He says, I owe about $30,000. I said, okay, let's take a look at what you got. So we look over there on the cash surrender, and he's got $32,000 he could do. So he says, okay, great. You're in luck. You've got $32,000. You can pay off that $30,000 student loan and get out from under all of those debts right there. Okay, great. So he takes that. And what this does, it takes the money off of the death benefit to pay off those student loans, okay? At that point, it does not touch the policy value, which has grown to $50,000, but it takes it off of the death benefit, which is where it can afford it far better than off of a policy value. Since this is never touched, this continues to grow without ever looking back. Okay, so that's what happens there. Now, that's where a lot of people say, now, wait a minute, how do we pay off that loan? How do we pay it back since it's my money? Well, obviously, since it's your money, do you ever pay yourself back? Well, yeah, you can. You can do that. You can do that through what you're doing every month with that $800 every month or $9,600 every year. It's going back toward that. Plus, that interest rate that's going in there, that goes toward paying back that loan that you pulled off of there. So as long as you're paying your premium, you never have to pay back that loan physically. It's going to continue to grow because the policy value is going to continue to grow, and it's going to be adding to that number every year like you see right there. All right, so let's go on down a few years and take a look at the next big event. Year 9, he looks up and he says, you know what, Ray, it's time that I start looking seriously at getting into a house of my own. I found a house that we can get into with a nice little FHA. All I need is about $10,000 to get into it. And he says, I'd also like to see what I can do to pay off all the rest of my loans while I'm at it, since it's year 9. And I said that, well, yeah, we can pay off your loans in 9 years or less. So let's take a look at what you got. So we've got $71,000, and if he takes $10,000 off to get a down payment on his new little FHA home, he can do that and still have about $61,000 left in there. And I say, okay, Eric, how much do you have left in, or how much do you owe on all of your debts altogether? And he says about $50,000. And I say, well, cool, you got about 61 left after you take off that $10,000 for your house, so you can be debt free. He says, cool, let's make that happen. And away we go. So at year 9, he's debt free and in his house. Really cool. Let's go on down a couple of more years. Big year 18, year 18. You say, now why is year 18 a big year? Well, that's when his son graduates from high school. And now he's got to deal with college education. At this point, he's invested $172,800 into his policy. But look, it's already grown another $54,000 as far as that's concerned. And at this point, as you can see, it's fully vested, and he could literally take out a loan the full amount of the policy value at that point. And by the way, his wife came up to him the next year after that baby was born, and she says, guess what, honey? We're pregnant again. So now he's got 2 kids to deal with. Well, since he was working on this program already ahead of time, he's already ahead of the curve. And at this point, he's got enough money to pay for 2 full 4-year scholarships of both boys, since in-state colleges for 4 years for a bachelor's degree right there is only $108,000. He's got enough to pay for both of them right there. Okay, so let's go on down a couple of more years. Big years, 30 years into this. Why is this big? Because at that point, that's when most mortgages are paid in full with a 30-year mortgage. Okay, so he's invested $288,000 at that point. And look at his policy value has grown to $608, literally double, more than double of what he's already invested. At this point, if he wanted to, he could literally go buy another home. So I say, Eric, where do you love the vacation? He says, well, I like this place over here. I say, cool. You've got enough money right here. You could go buy a vacation home in cash. Cool. All right. So that's one option that he could do right there at age 60 when he turns 30 years in this policy. But let's go on down to the big year. A lot of people look at the big year as retirement. Well, since the government has moved the new retirement age to about 67, 68, let's take a look at year 68. What happens there? Well, at that point, he can literally retire as a millionaire with $1,051,800. Okay, he could take that out of that policy tax-free and stick it in his back pocket and still have enough left over as a generational wealth that he can leave behind him. Let's summarize what Eric can do with his $1 Million Baby plan. By the numbers, Eric would have $32,765 to pay off his college loans in 6 years. And then he would be able to pay $71,233 to put down on a house, as well as pay off all the rest of his debts in year 9. Then when year 18 comes around, where his kids are ready to go to college, he would have $227,280 to pay off not one, but both kids' college careers when they turned 18. And then he would be able to pay $608,774 toward a vacation home when his home was paid off in 30 years. And then finally, when he turns 68 to retire, he could retire as a millionaire with $1,051,800 to supplement his retirement plan at age 68. And that's not even to mention that his plan would go all the way up to $4.5 million in death benefits. What a nice little generational wealth he could leave for his family at that rate. That's what he could do. Now let's see what your numbers look like. Your agent will contact you to complete the survey, and that way you can put the vacation destination on your survey so that the office can make sure you get the right vacation destination that you choose. And after you complete the survey, we will email your vacation voucher to you. And we're going to sweeten the pot just a little bit. If you know of any friends or relatives who would like to have a complimentary vacation just like what you're getting, if you put just 5 referrals with their phone numbers on the referral form, each of those referrals will get a complimentary 4-day, 3-night luxury resort vacation just like what you're getting. In return, we will give you a second vacation for 3 days and 2 nights with airfare for those 5 referrals. So fill out that referral form today to get that second vacation. We thank you very much for being a part of our $1 Million Baby webinar, and we're going to turn it over to your agent at this time.